Welcome to the Macdownunder Podcast for all Australian Apple computer enthusiasts and collectors.
Hi, and welcome to episode 43 of the Macdownunder Podcast. I'm Justin, and thanks for joining me for today's episode. Looking at our viewing history, it seems that not many were interested in Apple's wireless networking, either the infra-red episode or last week's episode on Apple's Airport, which is a shame. But thank you for joining me today to continue on our journey today with a summary of our series over the past 6 weeks on Apple networking. As you can see, slightly different format. I'm not going to be on camera quite as much, but we'll also cover our regular collecting news, coming events, and for sale finds. So, on to today's episode. I've put together a timeline to describe the various network developments that Apple undertook. Because I've covered as many technologies as I could by technology group, there was lots and lots of overlap in the dates. And I thought it would be interesting to wrap up this series by looking at what Apple was doing over time. So as we all know, Apple Computer opened its doors on the 1st of April 1976. We've just celebrated its 50th anniversary. And shortly after that, the Apple I computer was launched. It didn't have any networking built in. In 1977, Apple released the very popular Apple II. And in 1978, Apple released the Apple II communications card that we covered in the first episode. And this provided us with a serial interface to talk to other computers and potentially modems. 1980 was a big year for Apple. Not only did they release the Apple III, their so-called business machine, but they also rebadged the Novation Cat acoustic coupler as the Apple acoustic coupler, and they also released their first cross-platform interface for the Apple II. That was the IEEE 488 card to talk to a whole range of machinery, but on their terms, not on Apple's terms. The following year, in 1981, Apple released the Super Serial card that just about every Apple II collector will have somewhere in their collection. The following year, in 1982, again, Apple delved into external cross-platform with the Apple II Communications Protocol card that spoke to IBM mainframe systems. And that same year, the Apple II school bus was also launched, I think only in America, because I've never seen examples of it here in Australia. But as we know, it used the same technology that was ultimately used in Apple Talk. So that's why I've put it under the Apple Talk heading. In 1983, another big year for Apple, they launched the Lisa, my favourite Apple computer, I've got to say. And that same year, Apple released the Apple modem for telecommunications for all three products, the Apple II, the Apple III, and the Lisa. That same year, Apple also released Apple Line. Now this was their cross-platform box, I won't call it a modem, that connected between your Lisa in particular and an IBM mainframe network. They also announced that year that the AppleNet product, which was based loosely on Ethernet but slightly different cabling, that was announced. It was built into the Lisa system, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, but ultimately cancelled within a couple of weeks. But because it was based on the Ethernet protocols, I've left it under the Ethernet heading. So we can see that Apple was involved in lots of technologies right up until 1983. Not only serial, cross-platform, they'd started their own networking protocols with School Bus, and they were getting involved in the Ethernet ideas that came out of Xerox PARC. In 1984, of course, we all know that the Macintosh was released. So was the Apple IIc. In terms of networking, the only thing that was really announced was that Apple Bus was in development for the Macintosh. However, as we know, Apple Bus itself ended up not being developed, but it did turn into Apple Talk eventually. So in 1985, the big launch was the laser writer. Again, another product that Apple had seen at Xerox PARC, but made their own with a Canon engine and launched as the laser writer. And the way the laser writer, of course, communicated with the Macintosh and other systems was via Apple Talk, and so that's when Apple Talk got released. That same year, 1985, Apple launched the Apple Cluster Controller, an extremely rare device that allowed you to connect a number of Apple computers to an IBM mainframe network. In fact, you can even use one of those devices to be a modem, so you could dial into your Apple Cluster Controller and talk to your IBM mainframe from home. In 1986, the Macintosh Plus was released, as was the Apple IIgs. And the reason that I leave this up here is that, of course, that's when we got the 9-pin mini DIN serial connector. In 1987, the Macintosh 2 was relaunched. And of course, this was the first Macintosh that was truly expandable with its new bus slots. But that same year, Apple launched the Apple Personal Modem, slightly faster, and we know that at least in Australia, we got the IN modem as well for the Apple II. 1987 was a big year in Apple networking though. They released the new bus version of Token Ring called Token Talk, and they also launched the new bus TwinAx card. Now again, this was another card that was developed to connect directly to an IBM mainframe network. That same year, 1987, Apple launched the new bus EtherTalk card that could connect directly to a AAUI device or a 10-base-2 device over daisy-chained coaxial cable. So by the end of 1987, Apple had not only had modems available for all of its computers, but it also had a whole range of cross-platform devices specifically to talk to IBM networks, but also the IEEE 488 card from the Apple II back from 1980 could talk to a range of other devices from other companies as well. Apple had now launched Apple Talk and the local talk hardware, and now had a true Ethernet capability with the new bus EtherTalk card. So for a company that back in 1984 said that we're not a networking company, gee, by 1988, they had a lot of networking technologies available. In 1989, Apple released the new bus serial card. Remembering, this allowed multiple serial connections to your new bus-based Macintosh. In 1990, behind the scenes, Apple was still working on Apple II devices, this being the Apple II Ethernet card. And of course, there were two cards ultimately in development, but never launched. In 1991, we see the launch of the Quadra 700 and the Quadra 900. And this is important because those two devices signaled Apple's move to their own AAUI standard for Ethernet connection. That same year, Apple also launched the new bus Token Talk 416 card, the upgraded version of Token Ring, showing that they were still interested in talking cross-platform and in as many network environments as possible. Next, in 1993, Apple launched the Newton Message Pad, and this introduced the first wireless technology, the Sharp Ask infra-red protocol. And the following year in 1994, Apple launched the Message Pad 110, and this included the upgraded Sharp Ask protocol running at 38.4 kilobits per second. In 1995, more advancements in infrared technology, this time with the launch of the PowerBook 190 and the PowerBook 5300 that both included Apple's implementation of Apple Talk over infrared, IR Talk. In 1996, Apple signaled its move away from the AAUI connector that it introduced in 1991 to the ubiquitous 10-base-T. It did this first in its printer line. In 1997, with the launch of the PowerBook 3400C and the beige PowerMac G3, we saw 10-base-T being introduced, and we saw FireWire 400 being introduced as a PCI card option. But we also saw IRDA, the international standard for infrared communications, being introduced both in the PowerBook 3400C, but also the MessagePad 2000. Separately, A move towards 100-base TX was signalled with the introduction of a PCI card as an optional build extra. But 1997, with the launch of the PowerMac G3 Beige, was the last device that we saw that was able to support local talk networking in hardware. In 1998, of course, we saw the release of the iMac, signalling a change from standard serial to the universal serial bus. And we also saw the last device that was launched with an IRDA wireless device. So very short-lived, really. IRDA only really for 2 years worth of products. The following year, in 1999, as we spoke about last week, the original iBook G3 clamshell was launched alongside Apple's Airport Wi-Fi system. In 2000, the PowerMac G4 Gigabit, name gives it away really, it signalled the introduction of 1000 base T in an Apple product for Ethernet. Then in 2003, we saw the PowerBook G4 Aluminium and the PowerMac G4 Firewire 800 launched alongside Airport Extreme and also Firewire 800. In 2004, we saw the launch of Airport Express as a Wi-Fi media device. Interestingly, in 2005, we see that modems had been removed from the entire Apple product range, with the iMac G5 iSight no longer having a modem, requiring Apple to have a separate USB modem dongle for those people that still wanted a modem because they weren't built in anymore. Fast forward to 2008, and with the launch of the MacBook Air being an extremely thin device, we see that Apple needed to launch a USB to 100 base TX Ethernet dongle. Again, for the same reason, they no longer included Ethernet in the MacBook Air because of its size, and so if you needed it, you needed to use a USB device to achieve that. That same year, the Airport Time Capsule hard drive on a router was released. Fast forward to 2011, and the MacBook Pro announced the launch of Thunderbolt, the replacement to Firewire as the high-speed input-output device, but still capable of networking. In 2012, alongside the MacBook Pro Retina, again, this was a very, very thin device, one of Apple's thinnest laptops. There was no option to include Ethernet, so again, there was a Thunderbolt to 1000 base T adapter made available for this ultra-thin laptop. In 2013, the MacBook Pro Retina version came with the upgraded Thunderbolt 2. Fast forward to 2016, and the MacBook Pro of the day introduced Thunderbolt 3, still capable of networking. And of course, at the same time, we know that Apple continued to use Ethernet and continued to support Wi-Fi. Fast forward to 2021, and alongside the MacBook Pro M1 Pro or M1 Max editions, we see Thunderbolt 4, which was actually built in to the M1 chip. And getting very much closer to current day, in 2024, the M4 Pro and M4 Max chips included support for Thunderbolt 5. Again, still capable of networking at very fast speeds. And as we reported last week, of course, the iPhone 17 was launched in 2025, only recently, with Apple's N1 chip. Again, showing that Apple are still supporting Wi-Fi with their own silicon now. as well as Bluetooth. And of course, that gets us to the present day. And today, Apple still supports very fast Ethernet, very fast Wi-Fi, and Thunderbolt 5 for wired networking if needed. So there you have it, the snapshot of all of Apple's networking devices since 1976. For a company that isn't involved in networking, it sure has a lot of networking devices. So, which Apple networking devices do you have in your collection? Do you run any of these networks at home? I think most of us would have Wi-Fi, but do you have an Apple Ethernet network at home? Apple Talk? Maybe School Bus? Token Ring? Are you talking to that IBM mainframe you've got hidden in the back bedroom? Which is your favourite network? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. On to recent news. And while we're talking about networking, TashTalk boards. Gee, these fantastic devices were sold out within a day, so you'd need to go on the backlist now. But Feral Firmware have been talking about this on Tinker Different and the 68K Macintosh Liberation Army for a little while. And these boards allow you to connect your modern computer's USB port to an older Mac's local talk port, and using special software called TashTalk, developed by Feral Firmware, running on your modern Mac, Linux or Windows machine, you can talk to your older Mac using this connector over Apple Talk. What a fantastic device, bridging new technology with our favourite old Apple Talk networking. These boards are also available open source to build your own via GitHub. Links down in the description. And over on the Facebook Apple Newton fan channel, the PDA Museum has announced that they've got an online Newton MessagePad 2100 emulator. It looks fantastic. I've had a little play. So this runs the Einstein emulator, but it's doing it in Docker through VNC and allowing you a 30-minute session before it resets to play with the screen of the Newton. Now, when I had a look, it was a little bit off center, so that it's a little bit of work to do still, but gee, it's a fantastic idea, and I really enjoyed having a playing with it. Links down in the description. On to coming events, and Retro Gaming Bendigo have their next meeting on Saturday the 13th of June at 12 o'clock for a 12:30 start at the Huntley Memorial Hall. The Mac Museum. Now, I see that Matt's been posting about some of the things he has in store for the next open day. Link down in the description. However, it looks like he's restored an original Macintosh 128K that's going to be available for you to use. There's an LC2 that's going to be running with an Apple IIe card installed, so you can have a look at how Apple continued the Apple IIe product line well into the Macintosh era. That'll be a lot of fun. He's also working on recapping a whole lot of Mac classics so that you can network them. I'm hoping he's going to use Apple Talk for that, because that'd be great to see. And he's hoping to get a laser writer into that network as well. So again, Apple Talk would be perfect for that. He's also working on something special. So it's a bit of a hint, something else a little bit different, more to come closer to the next open. So I can't wait to find out what that's about. But the next open day is the 13th of June from 10 until 2. At Somerville in Victoria. The Adelaide Retro Computing Group have their next meeting on Friday the 12th of June at 5:30 until 10:30 p.m. in the Unley Community Centre in South Australia. Technology markets have got two upcoming markets. The first is the 7th of June at the Darebin Sports Centre in Reservoir, which is going to have a vintage collection market. Fantastic, I'll try to get there. And then the following week, the 14th of June, at the Springers Leisure Centre in Keysborough. Links down in the description. So finally for this week, WasFest. Their next session is coming up on the 23rd of May to talk about all things Apple II in New South Wales in a private residence. So reach out to the organisers for details. The links are down in the description. On to this week's for sale section. This week, I've looked out for anything that caught my eye for $100 or less that was listed in the past 30 days. Now, the first item is a doozy. It's a Mac Mini, a 1.66 Core Duo. so Intel. But it also comes with a 20-inch cinema display, the aluminium version. It's got a non-genuine mouse, and the photo does show a keyboard, but the keyboard is not included. But all of this for $50 in New South Wales, I think is a bargain, and I don't think it'll be there long. So if you want it, snap it up quickly. Next up, in Perth for $50, we've got the Apple Airport Extreme base station. Now this is the relatively rare UFO version, and it's in box, has a US plug admittedly, but these are unusual to get in Australia at the moment, and at $50 I think this is a bit of a bargain too. Next up, a friend of the show in Perth has got their Apple Image Writer 1 printer for sale at $50. So this is the Image Writer 1, and it's got the genuine silver grey Apple cable. So $50 in Perth. Now I've noticed a second one in WA for $100, so $50 is pretty cheap. Next up, another Mac Mini. This is the Core 2 Duo running at 1.8 gigahertz. It comes in box with remote, $60 in Brisbane, Queensland. Next up is an Apple iMac computer. Now this is a Core 2 Duo white iMac, and of course it'll have eyesight because it's an Intel. This one's in Melbourne for $75. Last up today, just tipping the $100 mark in Wollongong, New South Wales. This is an Apple PowerBook G4 17-inch model in working condition. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 43 and the end of our series on Apple networking. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Now, I'm not sure what we'll cover next week, so check in to find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks again for joining me today, and until I see you next time, take care. Thank you for joining the Macdownunder Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.